Tony, before we start with your team, sad news today about the passing of Phil Lowe as a former OKR head coach yourself. Just some thoughts and a tribute to him.
Oh, absolutely. A great man, a great rugby league player. He was tough as they came. I can remember being a child watching him in Australia, and he had the respect of all the Australians. And it was back in the times where it was all very, very tough rugby league, and played under different rules to nowadays. And he gave as good as he got, and he was able to give as much as he got. And it was sad because he's such a tremendous man as well. He was really inspirational for many people, and we feel for his family, and we thank him for the legacy that he left behind, and he did some wonderful things in his life. So his family should be very proud, and we wish them all the best.
Thank you for that, Tony. We'll get on to your team news. Start with the two hamstring problems that you've got with Carlos Timavave and Danny Houghton. How are they both?
Yeah, good. Still waiting on further results and on Carlos. Danny's okay. He's coming through, and he's touch and go for this week. Carlos won't be available for this week, but we're not quite sure of the extent, and we'll investigate further before we work out exactly how long Carlos will be missing. But Denny's a chance for this week, and pushing hard to be available for selection.
How are you approaching Danny specifically, given he's having to manage that hamstring issue during games? Is there a chance you may rest him for this one at all?
It's possible. It's possible that happens. But if he's fine, and he doesn't want to miss out on too much at the moment, maybe we'd limit his times or how we use him as well. There's some of the options, but we'll assess all that. If he's good to go, it's hard to leave him out. He's a warrior, and he loves the Challenge Cup, and he loves being involved. He's had some really big moments and great affinity with the cup. So he gets up and ready for the cup. So we'll see how he goes, and we'll not play it by ear. But if he's confident and we're confident in him, we'll keep going. And if we feel that he really needs a rest, we'll give him a rest.
The other two knocks that you had coming out of the weekend, Farmany Brown and Texoy, what's the latest on those two?
Yeah, both trained all week, so they were knocks rather than anything that would prevent them from taking the field for this week.
Have you got any other absentees or returns from longer term injuries at all?
No, not that I can think of. We've got another a suspension and in Frank, and getting Frank back, and then he picks one up. So we're missing Frank, but I can't think of anybody who's back available from last game. But so that's about all our news.
You mentioned Franklin Pele. I know you've questioned the yellow card that he was given at the weekend, but is his discipline becoming a concern for you at this point?
Oh, it was an enthusiastic tackle. Was it a little bit too enthusiastic? Well, it's been deemed that way, but he didn't do anything intentionally wrong. He thought the young bloke in front of him, or the elder bloke in front of him, he's the dummy king, and he was just trying to make a tackle on him. He couldn't see whether he'd released the ball or not. So, if it was a high tackle, or he was doing something similar to his last misdemeanor, I'd suggest so. But he was a fraction of a second. It's hard for some of those big men in fractions of seconds to pull handbrakes on. But that's what we're expecting him to do nowadays.
You talked to Josh post-match on Saturday about Jayden Ockenball coming off and the issues that he's having at the moment. Why do you think it's not clicked for him since coming over here to join Hull FC?
It happens. There isn't many Australians that come over and find their feet straight away. Trent Barrett was a big one, if you recall, many years ago, if you're old enough to remember Trent Barrett. Every fan in Wigan wanted him out of town in his first year, and he went on to become a club legend. Quite often it happens. It's different. It's a different league. It's a different culture. It's different style. It's different everything. So, I'd love to put Jayden in that category of Trent Barrett by the end of his stint here. But what I'm suggesting is there's not many Australians come here and sink straight into great form. He's a young man who's come over and he's got all the good intentions in the world to be doing well, and he's probably not doing as well, and he's beating himself up about some of that at the moment too. So he cares a whole lot. He's an intelligent young man, and he knows he can play better and he wants to play better, and it's a bit frustrating for him. So, I think we all understand that one of the biggest cripplers of sport and sports performance is frustration, and he's frustrated. He's not in better form at the moment. So there's a whole lot of reasons, but we're hoping to for him to help him work through that. That's my job, and to help him work through those hard times and those tough times. But that's what good sports people do.
Is he having difficulty with where he's being played at the moment, would you say?
In terms of what? Sorry.
Just sort of how
position.
His role within the team.
No, I don't think so. I think he's playing the role that he wants to play and prefers to play, and has become accustomed playing. And he's if the inference is that he's been played out of position, it's he spent most of his recent time playing in the back row, and he came here as a back rower. But will he get tried in other positions? Probably, unless he finds some form there soon. But we're working hard with Jayden, and we want him to achieve his goals, and we want him to help us achieve our goals as well. So there'll be some flexibility in that, but no, he's not been forced to do something out of his wishes. If that was what was inferred, I'm not sure.
Moving on, Tony, we're coming up to your favourite time of the year in terms of contracts and what have you. Reports coming out this week that Wakefield are having a look at Cameron Scott when his contract's up. What's the latest on Hull FC's attempts to tie him down to a new deal?
I'm not sure. They've had some talks. I know our CEO's talked to his agent, but as you point out, that I don't think it's really relevant about what time of the year it is. Those deals get done well before the allowed time. It's been talked out about before season starts sometimes. So it's just a nonsense. Having that date, it's just a nonsense. All it does is put a focus on it, and where everybody has to, tell somebody that they're making a decision so early in the season. The agents talk about all their clients to clubs all year round. So it's just a crazy focus on that point in time. In terms of Cam, he's a great kid. We'd love to have him, and I think he's great to work with. If we can afford him, we'll keep him. If he wants to go, he'll go. That's pretty much it.
You spoke to Josh after the defeat on Saturday about this being a project, it being a process that you're working through, and there's still a lot of work to do, as you mentioned. Some supporters will look back to a year ago and say, well, we got thumped by Salford a year ago this month. So what would you say is the improvement and the progress that you have made in that project so far?
Yeah, I think we're changing culture. Listen. 1 year that won the competition with Leeds Rhinos, we got beaten 70-7, I think it was, 70-6 by St Helens, and won the competition that year. It happens. You have days where you can get thumped. Even when we get to where we want to be, we'll still get thumped sometimes. But we're a long way off being a consistent performing team. We're not there yet. And so we're going to have some bad days. And if we're not in great form, or we're being tested with our consistency, whether that's players on the park or not, and being able to put the same people out week after week, some weeks we're going to have bad weeks. My job to try and get it so it's not so frequent and it's not often. But, us as a club, we haven't had success in being a top front-running club for many, many, many years. Our last successes were some time ago, and we need to stop that, and we need to change that. I was asked to come in here into this club to change the culture, and it is changing. It is changing within. Anybody who's about it and around it will tell you that. The players themselves will see some things changing and tell you so. It won't happen quickly, and it won't happen overnight. It rarely does. But I was asked to come in and help change things in that respect. And if you look at my past, my first job was with a team that was, on the verge of relegation each and every year at Huddersfield, and we turned that around to become a fairly successful club in terms of they're always up and around the mid, maybe top of the competition, which was nice to leave that in that way. My other qualifications for this position was probably next job. Leeds Rhinos hadn't won a competition in 32 years, and by the time I left there, we'd played in 3 grand finals, won 2 of them, and probably should have got a Challenge Cup as well. And then Warrington weren't part of the Big Four, and by the time I left there, they'd been in 4 Challenge Cups, won 3, and 3 grand finals. Turned that one around as well, and now talked about and been part of the Big Four for a number of years. Then went to another perennial yo-yo team in Hull KR, where they were up and down. They were bouncing in and out of Super League. By the time I left there, we'd played in a couple of semi-finals. So, I think my qualifications are okay for this. Maybe I've got lucky at all those places. Maybe I've had a whole lot of luck. Or maybe I turned the culture around at places. And that's what Adam knows that. I think he got asked this line of questioning yesterday where he went, it's just a non-question. And it is in our terms. We're just cracking on with going through the processes. Is there going to be some hurt along the way? Absolutely there is. There is. Are we making progress? Yeah, we think we are. We absolutely think we are. And this season, if we're going to be judged on that performance alone, well, it wasn't great. If you want to have a look at some of the other performances, we were pretty competitive and we're pretty spirited. I thought the boys on the weekend looked very fatigued and a bit shell-shocked when some of what happened on the weekend happened to them. And we would have liked to have seen it in a different sort of fight and in a different sort of way. But sometimes if you play sport, you just can't find those answers on a day. We want to be able to in the future, and we'll strive to. Even the weekend's performance, it will do us good in the long run. It will do us good. It'll galvanise us. The problem for some is when it gets tough, they want to duck their heads in the sand and not take responsibility and not front up and not fix things up. I'm the opposite. I'm in there. I want to put my head in amongst it and go, all right, let's go. Let's get more determined. Let's work harder. Let's make sure that those sort of days don't happen as regularly. They'll always happen. They will always happen. If you're going to be competitive in sport, and you're going to have to be prepared for a bad day sometimes. You just don't want them very frequently.
You mentioned those bad days, they're always going to happen. The problem is at Hull FC they've happened far too often over the past few years. So what are the perhaps wider structural, cultural issues that you feel need addressing to stop that from happening?
We need to toughen up, work harder. Though all those things are being addressed, we're aware of them. Just not going to fix them overnight. We'd love to go, right, we talked about it, it's fixed. It doesn't work like that. Anybody who runs a business, any sort of business knows that, goes through that tough time and need to keep perseverance and get some toughness and work harder, work smarter. We think we're doing some of that. We're still going to get beaten on our day by some teams, just like we hope to beat some other teams on our days as well and get in that graph. But, we want to be a high-performing team on a regular basis and as soon as we can. But it's not an easy thing to do in Super League. But as I pointed out to you before, there's not many places that any coach goes to and that happens quickly. Not many places. They usually pick up something that needs fixing. Sometimes there's been the odd time where somebody can pick something up that just needs tweaking, but often it needs fixing, and it's part of the culture that needs fixing, and each place has a different starting point to others, and it depends on its history. And as I pointed out to you, it's been some, and you're pointing out to me, it's been some time since we've had a really strong competitive team at the top of the comp. We've got to fight our way back to being that. So I'm in for the battle. I'm in for that till we are, and when we are, I'll be striving to take it the next step. But we're not there yet, and we've got to keep working hard to do that, and keep working smart as well as get more determined and more united. Because one of the great things about sport, and you can only be great when you are strong and united. Whenever you split, it makes the whole job tougher. I know there's some people out there that aren't happy at the moment, and they're not happy seeing some of the results and some of the performances, and I can understand that. But as I mentioned in press after the game the other day, there's some people that have been watching this game for 40 years, watching this club for 40 years. It hasn't been all, rosy all the way along, and they're used to, a highly successful team that, have won everything. They've had some tough times, and they've had a few good times. But if you go back to, you can go have a look at Leeds Rhinos if you want, and go have a look at their history and have a look at their peak times. They've probably had theirs and come through it, and they're looking to try and do another one again. But it was 32 years before the last period, and if you look before that, it was probably another 30 years between that. So it's precious in sport. It's sometimes we get caught up in where our expectations of our own teams and look at their history, and when you realise that it doesn't happen frequently to too many teams, we get a little bit shell-shocked, I think.
Before we move on to Huddersfield Giants, just finally, one of your previous answers, you started with the phrase changing the culture, which we hear a lot in sport. What does that mean to you as a head coach?
Changing culture? The way we treat and behave with each other, and culture, it's a fascinating topic, but ask people what culture means to them, but it's basically how you treat and interact with the people around you that you work with, and that's the real essence of it, I think, and how that transforms into and transpires into performance. And the culture's improved a lot since I've been here, a lot, and the culture, it's your behaviours, it's how you go about your training, how your attitude towards each other and to games, and how you respond to teammates, and how you motivate one another. So it's fascinating. Culture's always changing in every situation, and it's either to the positive or the negative. It's either one of those two, and even through some negative occurrences, that can build culture to be even stronger. And that's how it's got to be. And we've got to use even the tough times to make our culture stronger. And we're going through that at the moment. And maybe it has been years of going through this change, but we certainly need to keep on evolving and getting stronger and making sure that we become one of those competitive teams. That's what we're striving to do. Now, that's what I got hired to do by my owner and chief exec, and they've been great, and we're all united on that. We understand exactly what's needed to happen, and we're going through those processes. So, and I'm grateful for that support. They visit regularly, we speak regularly, and they've seen transformations, and we're united on that. The players are united on that. So we just crack on with our work, and while the external, there's sometimes some distractions, and they can be distractions, but they're not to us.
Challenge Cup then, Huddersfield Giants. How important has this competition now become in terms of giving players and supporters something to cling on to this season?
Well, we've got more than just Challenge Cup. We're 5 games into a season, and I think you guys, have already planned the celebrations at the end. It's just crazy. There's going to be ups, downs, twists and turns in both competitions. It's way too early. I think once a couple of teams lose a couple of games, and a couple of the more favoured teams win a couple of games, we go, all right, well, this is how the season's going to finish. I asked Warrington about a couple of years ago when they'd won 8 straight, and where they finished that season. Twists and turns and ups and downs and misfortunes, and go through patches. So if you're insinuating that this is our only hope to any success in the season, in the Challenge Cup, tend to disagree, and haven't given up hope on making our Super League season a successful one. But have I got a great affinity, and has this club got a great affinity with Challenge Cup? Absolutely. Good history, strong history with the Challenge Cup through the club and some of their last successes. Absolutely, they have. I've been on unfortunate end of being behind them, coming second to them on a couple of occasions when I've been an opposition coach throughout the years. Once at Leeds and once at Warrington. So I've suffered some of that history remembrance and celebrations that they have from time to time. But would I like to be part of more of them to come? Absolutely, and same with the players. For the players who are still here that were part of that, they'd certainly love to. There's not many of them left now. But, we'd like to create some more history for ourselves and more recent history, and that's what we're striving to do. But it's a long way off in terms of finals. We've got a really strong competitor on the weekend. They're very good team with a star-studded pack and a star-studded backline. So we're going to have to perform particularly well if we're going to enjoy the Challenge Cup this year.
What do you think of Huddersfield Giants this season?
Yeah, they've been competitive, and they've had a couple of results not go their way, not too far off in some areas. It's a very competitive competition, and that's why I'm reluctant to write anybody off at the moment, because I just think they'll go through periods of being really strong and successful, and they may have some twists and turns and some challenges along the way. This competition, just even with the way it's panned out so far with the number of sin bins and send-offs and yellow cards and suspensions and that. If anybody's going to make predictions, they're pretty game this year. You can have twists and turns within one game. I don't care who you're playing and which team you're playing. If You happen to have a couple of misdemeanors, it turns the whole thing on its head. And I think Huddersfield is going to be as capable as any other team within the competition. So, they'll be a tough opponent, that's for sure. My pleasure.
Right, Tony.
Hey, Dan.
Obviously, you've got the full backing, there's unity, there's togetherness at this club, we all know that. But how do we get out of this long term together, as a playing group, as a coaching staff, everything?
Yeah, win consistently and become a competitive team where we're winning more weeks than we're not. And we're not there yet. We're not there this year yet, and we need to become more consistent. Hopefully by the end of the season we are, and not even by the end of the season. I want us to be competitive and in pushing for it in each and every game this year. This each and every round. So when we do that, Dan, whether we're winning each one of them, but it'd be nice to be winning them and consistently winning. And we know that we've made change, haven't we? In the meantime, do we know that we've made some changes? Internally we do. Sometimes externally people might say, well, nothing's changed. Well, we think it has, and we're in the process. And as I said to you before, I enjoy going through these processes. I'd like them to be quicker. I would love to have been able to wave a wand at each of the places that I've been and made sure that it happened quick. I know the expectations, the wishes are there for it to happen quickly. What I do know is, from my experience at most places, it takes time. It takes time. And it depends where the base level or the starting level of our history and our culture is at the point in time where I take over. If it's at a fairly strong position, it takes less time. If it's not at such a strong position, it can take longer. So it changes. It's different in each situation. But do I enjoy these sort of times? No, I don't like watching the team get absolutely smashed all over the park like the other day. Absolutely not. Nobody enjoys that. And I'm not one of those masochists that would say that that's enjoyable at all. But hey, is it something that will make us better? Yeah, well, it has already. I would hope that not only a response this week, but I hope we were able to address some aspects of our performance from the weekend that I hope lasts for the rest of some of these boys' playing careers, maybe even their lives. In terms of, some lessons learned about how to handle adversity or when things go wrong. There's some really important messages and some things that can come out of defeat and heavy defeat. Sometimes they're more long-lasting, those memories. I'm hoping so. I hope some of them never have to go through those sort of defeats again. I know as a coach, I'm going to have to go through those moments again and again and again. It's the profession that I choose. I know that those things can happen. I'm trying to make it so it doesn't happen so often with this group of players and this club again. That's my job.
Obviously, the start of last year was tough, but you turned it around and there was that spell, I think it was 8 wins from 12 mid-season. What are the keys to making sure that happens again this year? What would you say your side were doing in that spell that they're not doing now?
We've had a lot of changes again and changes in personnel, and sometimes you get a whole lot of changes in and you get a whole lot of people in, and sometimes when they get put under pressure, they revert to what they've always done. On the weekend, I thought there was aspects of our performance where some of our players weren't playing in some of the systems that we like to play in and would prefer to play in, and they probably reverted to some of what they've done before. What we've spoken about since then is, hey, listen, we've got to stop those natural reactions of processes rather than a mismatch of processes that sometimes, and we looked disconnected there the other day from each other. rather than all connected up. And we, you know, I'm going to say it. I think Wigan are, you know, a great example of defensively they're all connected up. They're organised. They know what each other are doing. They're in that. They've got a culture there that is ingrained in them. That, you know, they come into the team. You know the person next to you is going to do this and that, and we're not there yet. You know, even on those things, and many of the aspects, and we need to be one of those teams. We need to, and when we get put under pressure, we know how the person next to us is going to react. You know, we're not there yet, but we're striving to be, and we're learning sometimes the hard way.
When you say things take time, is that specifically what you're getting at, one of the key things?
Yeah, for sure. It's to change habits and to change culture takes time, because we often have come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different styles, different, you know, focuses and different emphasis that have been placed on us before and thrown together, and you're hoping to gel as quick as you can. Unfortunately, it takes time. It'd be great to be able to just, to be able to just put it together more quickly, but often it doesn't. And, you know, it's often the teams that have been through some tougher times over periods of time that, you know, it takes a little longer, you know, to change some of that. So, you know, we've got some young people in here that it's been a while since they won on a regular basis. So, you know, it's hard for them to know what it's like. For some of our older guys, we're hoping that they remember what it's like and can pass some of that on. But and for some of the guys that we introduce in here, we want them to bring some of the great culture that they've enjoyed in the past and try to, you know, bring that into our environment and to enhance it. But, you know, it takes time for all those different personalities and bodies to come together and make that mismatch of cultures all come together and be really strong. And we're making progress. I think we're stronger. If you see the way we train this year compared to what we trained last year, way better. Well, will it keep on improving if we keep those things going? Absolutely it will. Hard workers usually, you know, become rewarded with good performances, and we're working hard.
Is that the biggest reassurance you can give to the fans, that if your squad keeps that intensity, then things hopefully, you know, keep the hard work, it will improve?
Yeah, I can't make any assurances. All I can say is stick with us, and, you know, we're going to try and come out the other side and give you something to smile about and cheer about. You know, I can understand some of them. You know, I get a lot of people around town and around the city. You know, we're here at the university, so it's hardly like we're in a private sector and we don't get to see anybody. And, you know, I go to the supermarket and I go around, and, you know, the basis, most of the people are around me and that I see saying, hey, stick with it, we'll get through this, and we're with you. You know, and they're the people that you want it along on this journey. You know, now sometimes there's some outspoken people that make a lot of noise and they want to vent their frustrations about their team in different ways, and they've got a right to do that. Sometimes that is more a sensational line for us to go down, particularly if we're in the media, you know, and you want the coach's head or you want this player's head, or you know, they're attention seeking. Mostly the people out there and the genuine supporters are supporting and go, hey, we want to get through this too, and we're going to be with you to get through this, and that's really helpful. You know, that's when you're united, it makes you stronger.
Obviously, when you get results like this, people do question things like long-term plans, but I think Hull, yourself, the CEO, James Clark, Adam Pearson, you've all been very clear and abundant what that long-term plan is, and I've seen no suggestions to see you deviating away from that. Obviously, we know you're trying to bring through young players, we know you're trying to get to play a style of play.
We've got a lot of kids training with us, you know, that aren't ready yet, you know, aren't ready for first grade, but they're training with us so they can become ready as quick as we can, you know, and hopefully give them the best coaching that they possibly can, to educate them, to bring them along. So, we're doing everything we can for that to happen. We know that other successful programs and teams within the competition do that. They bring their juniors through, and we've got to stop just trying to buy them through. We've got to produce some. We've got to produce some home grains, and we've got to make them hardier and stronger and more determined and better prepared. And we're doing all those things. We've got a great academy coach in Franny Cummins, who's doing a great job with our younger guys and the transition guys. So, yeah, that's a big part of our future. But us, the rest of us and the players that we bring in, we need them to perform. We need them to lead the way and pass on some really good culture to the young guys coming through. So, we've got a plan, and we're going to see it through. And I love when it all happens. And some of those louder voices, you don't hear them so much down the track, and that's how it's tended to be throughout most of my career. Wherever I've been, like to think, well, it has been the case that each place has come through and become successful, and also a whole lot stronger for a number of years post my success there at each of the clubs. And that's what I'm striving to do here. I want to be a top competitive team whilst I'm here, but I'm also want it to be strong and surviving and thriving long after I go.
Obviously, a lot of questions have been asked about recruitment, retention at the minute. Is the message there one of patience? Obviously, we'll talk about, you mentioned Jaden Ockenball, but there's 3 others, isn't they, who have come to the country, and obviously Neil Brown, Evan Etiese, Franklin Penley. Obviously, the club brought them to the club for a reason, so there must be some confidence there that they'll get better as the year goes on.
Of course they will, yeah, of course they will, and they'll show their worth. It's hard. I can remember having a recruitment meeting at the last place I worked, and after 3 rounds in one particular season, one of the discussions around the round table of retention and recruitment was get rid of Sean Kenny Dow at the end of the year. And I went, after 3 rounds, you're making a decision on such a great player. Crazy stuff. Crazy. Skids went on to be one of the best recruitments that they've ever done, in my opinion, in terms of changing their culture and his influence on that whole group of players. So you're just making some crazy decisions if you're basing it all way too early. And but it makes it a bit more sensational for some people. And but we don't hear about the ones who. Once Sean Kenny Dow goes on to be a terrific. I always thought he was a great player. That's what tends to happen. But I'm hoping that's the same sort of case for all our boys here that may well be copping something. I don't know. I don't read it. I can only imagine. I'm hoping they don't read it because, the last thing they probably need to do is listen to too many outside noises. Whether they're going successfully or not, they probably don't need to listen to outside noises is my advice to them, and just focus on what their job is and doing the best for their club and their teammates.
Some of the fan base is pretty toxic right now, that's the way I'd use it. Everyone gets it, the club gets it, the players get it, the coaching get it, we get it as well, everyone gets it.
Listen, I'm sure there probably is some toxic stuff out there, but please don't sweep it across everybody. It is, because I just gave you some examples, and what I tend to get is quite the opposite. Very loyal and very supportive, and people who wish, the club and the badge and their team well. I get so much of it. Don't get caught with too much of the noisy ones, is my bit. Those who really love their club and have done for some time, and they'll be loyal and they'll be supportive. They'll be disappointed, and so am I. I'm disappointed when my team loses, but please don't. Just because there's some noisy ones out there that may be more outspoken than some of the the real hardy supporters and the supporters. There's fans and then there's supporters, and there's loads of supporters for FC out there, and you know they want the team to do well, and will support them through the hard times and the good times, and we'll be there to say, well, I stuck by my team during those tough times, and they'll be the ones who will enjoy the sweeter times, because they know that they were loyal and they were strong and they kept with their team all the way through.
From one thing you said to me last year was you were very confident of putting out a very competitive, attractive side this year. You said last week you don't want to make excuse making, but how important is it to get your best players on the panel? We talk about Jake Truman, the bloke's played 14, 15 times. He's in the top 5 if we're being realistic, top players at the club. Big Super League player. How important is it to get those big names on the squad, and how much has it impacted you, the fact that they're sat in the stand right now? Because it's a reality, isn't it?
Other people can make those calls. Listen, I know how important it is. I'm not here to try and convince other people of that. All I'll say is you take the number one halfback out of, possibly your number one halfback out of each one of the teams, and I think you change each one of the teams. The only one that may be able to cope with that really is maybe Wigan. Where they mightn't have as bigger impact by taking their number one halfback out, but most teams would be highly affected by that. Do we want Jake back? Yeah, we do, but we're not going to sit around worrying about whether Jake's there or not. In the meantime, we've got a job to do without Jake. Will he make it easier? I think so, but we've got to do it in a different way, in a harder way sometimes, in a craftier way sometimes, and we've still got to go and get those results, no matter who's in or out. Have there been some challenges this year? Absolutely, yeah. Is it different to some of the challenges that I've had before? Absolutely, it has. Some really weird ones, but it is what it is. There's no use whinging about it or complaining about it. We've got teams out there that we think can do a job and can do a good job, and we're going to continue to believe in them that way, and we're going to keep attacking the season that way. When we get some more of our players back, it'll be great.
So Usyk is an example there, but he's far from the only one.
Yeah.
Again, we talk about Jaden and some comments you've made, but he hasn't had the same halfback for the 5 games, the same centre, the same winger. How much of an effect does that help for Jaden as well? Because in order for him to thrive, surely he's got to have the same people next to him all the time.
It helps. He's not completely not familiar with people, but there's been a lot of changes, and some have been forced. A lot of them have been forced changes. Not all of them, but that's part of the test and the challenges of Super League, and that's why I'm also pointing out that other teams will have some of those times as well, where they won't be able to put out the same team or the same pairing and the same combinations each and every week. That's still yet to come for some. We've experienced a fair bit of it so far, our fair share. I'd like to just do one game with 13 players for 80 minutes, give that a try. That'd be a nice little change. I think it would affect our players, not fitness, but recovery. I just think it can become draining, both physically and emotionally, on our players when they're going through those periods of only having 12 men. You have got to work your absolute backside off when you're down a player, when particularly if the opposition have got 13 on the park, and I think it does bring in fatigue, and could it have been a contributor to last week's performance? I believe so. The culmination of those sort of catch up and can have an effect on you. Just like the emotion of some big matches and some derby matches, sometimes over the years, you often see flat performances. So, the culmination of a whole lot of those things can have an effect. We've still got to try and overcome those things and they're not excuses. We've got to be tough enough to be able to handle them.
A couple of questions on this one. Response so far from your group after obviously what happened against Lee. What's that been like this week?
Honest appraisals and honest feedback and honest assessment, and nobody's swept it under the carpet and taken it head on, and dealt with it like grown-ups and responsible grown-ups that care a whole lot about what we do. And the response has been great. It's been tough. It's always tough coming in and doing a review when you perform poorly. And we knew we performed poorly, and there wasn't anybody hiding from it. And we accept responsibility for that and ownership of that. But it doesn't make it where it's not uncomfortable, and we have to go to places where it's uncomfortable. Just the fans have to go through it sometimes, supporters, but our players certainly have to relive it and learn from it and try to, and coaches and try to, for it not to re-happen again. So it's been a not so pleasurable start to the week, but we've responded very well in the way that we've gone out there and tackled our training since to fix some of the areas that we really need to address.
You mentioned after Saturday's game that some youth could come back into consideration. Also choose the ones that are in the 21, for example. So Lewis was in there, Charlie was in there, Jack Charles was the 18th man. I mean, what are their chances of coming into your thoughts this week into selection?
Yeah, they'll be in the 18 or 21. They'll be there and thereabouts, all of those boys. We've got no hesitation in using any of the names that you've just mentioned there, and look forward to those young guys coming through and developing. And are they the finished articles? No, absolutely not. And we don't want them to suffer too many of those big defeats, but will they? Some of them experience some of those harder days. They will, yeah, absolutely they will, and hopefully that'll shape them. But we're hoping those young boys, can push through it and gain the experience that's necessary, and gain the knowledge of their game and their teammates' game, so it doesn't happen anymore to them. They'll be there and thereabouts again.
Stuff. Cam Scott, is there still a decision to be made there either way?
In terms of selection?
In terms of his future at the club, sorry.
Oh, right. I presume so. I'm not sure that you're allowed to sign contracts at any other clubs. Or talk to them. Listen, on all that, do we want young people like Kem to stay here with us? Absolutely we do. Will they have some big decisions to make about their futures? Yeah, they will. When our chief exec will work through that with his agent when hopefully as we're speaking, and but those things they're just happening all year round now. It's, as I said earlier, there's no cut-off dates. There's no coming up to that time. You may have to tell a player that you haven't made a decision on them yet, but they're already talking. Their agents are already talking to other clubs even before that date comes around.
Just put this into context then. We reported that Wakefield were interested in Cam Scott. We've got about 1 million replies saying it's a done deal. What you on about? What would you say to that?
Could be the case. I think there's a lot of done deals done from what I'm hearing about, all different players from all different clubs. There's nothing stopping anybody from doing that, and and how can you? But I'll believe anything once I know that it's true, you know, and if it's true and people know, well there you go. They know more than me, but, you know, could it be happening? Absolutely, it could. You know, I believe that there's other deals done at other clubs, and, you know, I think that club has been very, very, very active in the market, you know, and prepared to, you know, probably spend more money than some others would spend, and as long as they're all doing it within cap and within the rules and within the regulations, and so be it.